Today we're going to be building the Diamondback Airen 1 road bike. This is a women's road bike. Some things to consider when you're buying a bike like this that comes in the box is you're going to need to be able to feel comfortable with going through the entire bike, making sure the brakes are set properly, your derailleurs are set properly, and all the bolts are tightened. If that's not something you feel comfortable with, hopefully this video will help, and if worse comes to worse, you should be able to take this to a bike shop and they should be able to assemble it for you. Sometimes it costs a little bit more money. Some bike shops may not do it if you order it through them. If you buy it online, you're kind of on your own when it comes to that kind of cost. So hopefully this will help. So we're going to go ahead and unbox it and we'll go through the assembly steps. Okay, so the first step we're going to do is we're going to take this plate off so we can mount the handlebar. Now these are just finger tight by the factory, so you don't really need any tools to take them off. This set does come with a set of wrenches. I'm not going to use them. I'm just going to go and use a 4mm socket wrench to go through and do the assembly. It's a little bit faster than using these Allen wrenches on the keychain, but these work fine, but I'm just going to use my 4mm socket instead. Now when you're mounting the handlebar, you want to make sure that your wires aren't wrapped around the head tube or around the stem in a weird way. So I just need to get and wrap that around, get that underneath. Now we're just kind of going to put these on finger tight to get them started. I'm not going to worry about angles just yet, just to get it started. I'll hold that in place. So as you can see, there's still a little bit of a gap here. What I'm going to do is just kind of leave that a little loose for now, because once we get the wheel on, we're going to want to make sure that we get this angle flat with the road. So we're going to leave this for now, and then we're going to go on to mounting some of the other parts. Okay, so this bike actually has a 4mm bolt to loosen the seat clamp for the seat post. Now some bikes just have that lock lever like you see on mountain bikes. This does not, so you can't really change this on the fly very well. Now this seat also has this minimal line right here. That's pretty much the minimal engagement that has to be in the seat tube. So we'll go ahead and put this in. Now all I'm doing is just making sure that the seat is straight with the top tube to get it nice and straight, and then I'm just going to go ahead and tighten this down. I'll go ahead and set the right height later. And that's the seat. Alright, well these are the pedals that come with the kit. Nothing fancy about them, just stock Wellgo pedals. Now these threads on these cranks are directional, so you need to make sure you don't confuse them because the left will not go on the right side. So these are stamped from the factory with the left and a right. So we'll go ahead and put the pedals on. Easy way to remember is the pedals always thread towards the front of the bike. Okay, so our next step is to mount the front brake caliper. To do that, we just take the assembly, we take this nut off the back, which is a 5mm nut, so I'll be using my 5mm socket instead. And we'll just take and slide this through the hole here in the front, like that. Then we'll go ahead and put that on and start mounting it. Now the easiest way to do that is obviously just to turn the fork of the bike so you can get access to the nut so the top tube or the bottom tube is not in your way. Just put that in there and start tightening down, and then we'll route this cable onto the brake and we'll cut it short because as you can see, it's a lot of cable for that front brake. Okay, so still have some movement here, which is okay, because you're going to want to have that move just a little bit when you're riding, just in case you have some brake rubber or something, you can make that adjustment. So now we'll go ahead and get this brake line set. Okay, so the next step in this process is we're going to take and route this cable. We're going to have to route it through here, and then it's going to connect onto this nut right here. And so what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to pull this cable to make sure it's all taut inside the grip. And make sure we got all the slack taken out of this grip right here. And then we'll go ahead and mount that cable. Get the brake all tight, buttoned up. So what we're going to do, we won't cut this cable yet. As you can see, there's quite a bit of length left until we get the wheel on, because we'll have some play we need to mess with to get this tight and get the amount of pull it takes to get the brakes to engage. So generally I like a little bit tighter so it doesn't take the full lever pull to get the brakes to engage. So we'll tighten that up once the wheel's put on. Alright, pulled it tight. Get it through here. Undo that screw. Take and put that inside like that. Again, make sure it's pulled tight. When we pull that, okay, we can see it's moved. There we go. Okay, so next up we're going to go ahead and put the front wheel on. To do that, you have to put the QR through the front wheel. Now this is just a simple thread on and thread off, so you just need to take the one side of the nut off, one of the springs, and then put it through the wheel. These are just shipping brackets that come with the wheel. Now some wheels and tires are directional, so you need to look for any markings saying these are. These Michelin Dynamic Sports are not directional, so it doesn't matter which way or which side the QR goes on or which way it faces forward. Usually what I like to do is make sure that the release is on the same size as the rear wheel, which is this side. Now these are just going to get put on. The cone faces towards the nut and the smaller end faces towards this other nut, and then just start it. Remove the shipping bracket. Just put it on. Now I didn't tighten that very tight, it's just actually just a little snug where it's easy to get on and get off. It doesn't need to be super tight. You can, but there's no real need for it. And the trick is it's supposed to be quick release, not hard to remove. So there you go. That's the front wheel. Okay, now that we've got the wheel on, now we can go ahead and get the brakes buttoned up, because that's going to want to pull a little bit with this cable. So we're going to go back and retighten the bolt back here, and that'll set that straight, and then we'll take the slack out of the brake line and get it cut, and then we'll get this wedge put on it. Okay, so now you can see why we didn't cut the cable and set everything, because when we go to press the brake lever, it actually doesn't touch. So this is why we got to take some of the slack out of the line, and then we'll cut it and set it, and then we'll also set the brake pads. As you can see, the brake pads are not going to hit the contact point, so these have actually got to come up. Be the same on the rear, and then once we get that done, we'll start working on the gearing. Now we've got the brake cable cut, and you left a little bit here, so in case I need to go back and do work later. And now we're going to just go ahead and put this little wedge on, and then we're going to crimp it with just something that'll pinch it so it won't slide off. So put that on, and we'll just crimp it. There, done. Now is to align the front wheel with the stem to the frame. As you can see, it's a little off, so we're going to go ahead and straighten that out, and we'll tighten down the headset bolts as well as the clamps for the stem, and then the whole front of the bike will be done. The only thing that'll be left is gearing. Make sure the derailleurs are set correctly and that the bike changes gears. Same with these bolts. I'm not going to go all the way tight on one. I'm going to just kind of work them both in to help get them seated properly. Still in the same story, you're not going to want a gap, or you're not going to need to worry about closing this gap. There's going to be always some gap there. If you try to close it, you'll either strip the threads or break the bolts. Not a good idea. Now, just the easiest way to make sure that that's not loose is you're going to sit here on the top tube, grab your brakes, lock it, and just rock back and forth and see if you can get any shaking, feeling vibration coming from the fork through the steer. Yeah, we're okay. We're all done. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and finish tightening up the handlebar. As you can see, there's a little bit of a droop here, so what we want to do is we want to get this to be parallel with the ground, so that's why I didn't tighten these bolts. So now, go ahead and get that pulled up. See how that looks? A little bit taller, so I'm really just looking for this plane here to be parallel. Yep, should be okay. Make sure we're straight here, and then we'll do that star pattern, corner to corner, tightening on the stem, and this will be done. Now I'm not going all the way to tight on each one. I'm just getting it to where it's snug and then moving to the next one. That way there's even tightening throughout. Now, as I mentioned earlier, here's this gap here between the stem and the front plate. It's kind of tight, not too tight, but it's just snugged down to where it's not going to move and it holds it pretty solid. But there's still a gap here. There's going to be a gap on the bottom as well, so don't worry about that. It's the way it's supposed to be. Okay, so I've gone ahead and flipped the bike upside down because I don't have a bike stand and I need to be able to turn the crank. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go through the gearing, see if I can hear for anything that sounds abnormal, such as that noise you're hearing there, and then we're going to run through all the gears to make sure that it's going all the way over, doesn't come all the way out that way, or doesn't fall into the inside, and make sure that it hits all the gears correctly. We're going to be looking for any rubbing that we might see in here on the front derailleur. As you can see, that's kind of moved all the way over, and we'll get that adjusted. There are some barrel adjustments right here on the frame that will do some fine tuning for here in your middle play. There's some stop sets you can see kind of back in there that will adjust the screws to go when it's all the way out and all the way in. We'll do the same thing here on the rear derailleur that controls the amount of movement there is. There's some screws that we'll be able to tighten and loosen right here on the rear that will help move this whole arm in and out to make sure we get all the cogs on the cassette. So we'll go ahead and do that. Alright, I usually like to start from the outside, work my way in, as well as here. So we're going to be looking for specific issues with cross chaining. Cross chaining is where I'm going to be in my largest gear up here on the front and my largest gear here in the back. Generally, you'd want to be in your smallest gear here while you're in your biggest gear here in the front, and vice versa. What will happen is you're running kind of diagonal, and so you're going to get some cross chain rub in here. So we're just going to go ahead and start cranking and see what we get. Okay, so I'm getting some rub here, so I need to adjust the derailleur to pull this out to get the rub away from here. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and run through the gearing again, see what we got. So, biggest to small, we have no rubbing noises. So we have a little bit of a hang-up issue. That noise you're hearing is the derailleur trying to click over, but not quite catching. So we'll come all the way back. It's all the way bottom. So it's starting to click a little bit. So we can actually make some small adjustments here. See, that shows that we went too far in one way, so let's go back over. All I'm doing is just tightening a barrel bolt that's here in the front. Not a bolt, but a barrel adjustment. Does some fine tuning here in the rear. So we're going to just keep moving that so it jumps over. Back through. go. No more rubbing. Gearing's good. All I'm thinking left now is to take it outside and give it a spin around the block.